You're welcome once again to the marketplace. Now, renowned entrepreneur and researcher with Imani Africa, Bright Simmons, says governments should step up investments in various tourist sites if it intends to pursue further the agenda of the year of return. According to the researcher, Ghana has the potential of raking in billions of dollars annually, only if it invests heavily in tourist sites. Karen Dudu has more in this report.
The Year of Return marketing campaign in 2019 was created to encourage African diasporans to resettle and invest in Africa. As of September 2019, according to air travel traffic, 75,000 tourists are said to have visited Ghana. The Minister of Tourism had earlier projected about $1.9 billion generated from it. Meanwhile, the Ghana Tourism Authority said it invested $6 million in preparation towards the Year of Return. However, researcher with Imani Africa, Bright Simmons, said the investment made by government was misdirected as it focused more on advertisements instead of revamping various tourist sites, which he notes could have earned the country more revenue.
So having had great PR, great advertising, people are now saying that we have top of the mind awareness. The question is that what are we actually selling? And the problem we have is that our heritage tourism sites are in disarray. We had about 64 forts and castles built sometime between 1482 to 1780. Of those, a half are already in utter ruin. Another half of the remaining 34 or so, another half is not really viable for tourism. Remember that all of these sites are UNESCO World Heritage Sites. That means that we have more UNESCO World Heritage Sites, particularly if you add the sites in Kumasi, more than France, one of the world's largest tourism earners, earning almost $80 billion from tourism every year, more than our GDP. So if we have these powerful assets, why are we investing only about $230,000 a year into maintaining these assets? That is a critical point, because you cannot go and advertise something which is not fundamentally being improved upon. And that is our argument. That is why it is not surprising that Ghana does not rank among the top 10 destinations in Africa. And that Ghana is not in the top 10 most competitive tourism destinations in Africa, according to the World Economic Forum. That's a problem. In the Visa OpenX Index, Togo and Benin outperform us. This is not allowed. We are in the bottom 10th. These are critical issues that must improve in the next year. We can't wait for a decade. The next year must be the year of correcting the mistakes that have prevented the Year of Return from translating PR success into sales success, or at the very least could hobble it from becoming so.
Meanwhile, Chief Executive of the Ghana Tourism Authority clarified that the $1.9 billion project was based on an expected revenue to be derived from the number of tourists on assumption that they spent $2,500 over a 10-day period.
Beginning of 2019, and we've seen a growth in the numbers in terms of year-on-year comparison. So as of September 2019, there are about 763,000 or so international arrivals. And we use that as a default benchmark, because you understand that if you want to define who a tourist is, per UNWTO definition, anybody who's moved into the country for a period below a year for any other reason can be classified as a tourist. And so we still haven't been able to do the analysis properly of how many people came specific to each event. That is very difficult to do. So once the international arrivals numbers start going up, you can then now clearly see, okay, what is causing this movement? And so you make an assumption. People who do economic analysis will appreciate that economic analysis is based on assumptions. Other than that, we wouldn't take samples.
The Tourism Authority says it is awaiting figures on the travel for January 2020 in order to assess the overall number of visitors that made it for the Year of Return. For Joy Business, Karen Dudu.
Meanwhile, an African diaspora and a poet, Kofi Gyamfi, is calling on foreign investors in Ghana to help develop Ghana's economy with their share of profits. According to the author of Dark Girl, Kofi Gyamfi says he believes foreign businesses can do more to support Ghana's economy if they share their profits equally with government instead of repatriating all profits made from the economy.
As we wrap up on the Year of Return, some diasporans have been sharing their views on Ghana's business environment. Kofi Gyamfi is US-born Ghanaian and poet. To him, foreign businesses in Ghana must have a mindset of helping develop Ghana's economy by sharing their profits fairly with the state.
There are a lot of foreign people that own here, which is okay with any country, but they should know they should be supporting the Ghanaian, any Ghanaian initiative. They should come to this country with the understanding, at the end of the day, I'm here to build up the Ghanaian economy because I'm eating off of their land. There should be nobody that comes here, takes from our land, and then sell it back to us at a premium. That is just rape. That's highway robbery, right? That's how I feel at my core, and it pains me deep inside to see, foreigners come here, pay no respect to the people, pay no respect to the land, go back to their countries and make sure and spend all the money within their communities. As Ghanaians, we must enforce, the government must enforce that the foreign companies that are coming here invest equally, not nominally, not smoke and mirrors, not just saying that, oh, I have a partner, his name is Yao, but then Yao only gets 1%. No, 50-50 if you're going to be on Ghanaian land, you should be giving to the Ghanaian people. And that needs to be highly enforced, by government. I think that's the only way that we grow. Otherwise, we look like we're growing, but we're actually, going backwards.
Says being in Ghana was uplifting experience he always yearned for. He took advantage to launch his latest book, The Dark Girl, which he said was inspired by the struggles of the black woman some 400 years ago. The Dark Girl, he said, encourages and uplifts every black African lady to keep their skins natural.
As a poet, there are some poems that you write, and then there are some poems that write you. This is one of the poems that have written me. So in essence, Dark Girl is to bring to the light, to highlight who we're talking about when we're talking about black women being marginalized across time. So it's very important to be specific that the Dark Girl in particular has had trials and tribulations that she has to go through in order to be here, and she's still going through those tribulations today.
Accompanying Kofi Gyamfi to Ghana for the first time is Joseph Millard, who said Ghana's hospitality industry is just what you expect when on a vacation.
Seeing myself, and from what I've heard from different friends, all of the amenities are pretty much fine. It's what you expect when you're on vacation. So right there, then and there, I don't have much critique, honestly. But the funny thing is that with having friends and with knowing families that I hear, is even less expensive than I thought beforehand, because there's a lot of visiting different families, a lot of eating inside of homes, and then when we're enjoying ourselves out, we've had some great nights out here.
Brett Duho for Joy Business.
Moving on to other stories, the State Pensions Trust (SNET) says it is reviewing its method of compelling employers to pay workers' contributions. Recalcitrant employers over the years have been arraigned before court over non-payment of contributions. Director General of the Trust, Dr. John Ofori-Tinkwang, says the new approach will oblige them to pay even before any court actions are taken.
When people are served those summons and they know that there is really a criminal action that is going to be brought against them and that SNET is serious, more often than not, they actually end up paying. But I don't want to get there. I don't want to have an army of workers who are knocking on people's doors just to serve them summons. I want it to get to the point where the employers themselves will voluntarily give us their money. Well, how can they do that? They will do that if they see value in the scheme for their employees. Employees will also get their employers to comply when the employees also see value in the SNET scheme, that if their employer is not paying for them, they are being shortchanged, right? So if these two parties see value in the scheme that we run, then they would actually voluntarily want to give us their money. And that will make our job a little easier, our operational costs will be less, and you don't have to go and harass people to be taking them to Saturday courts in order for them to be able to apply. So we go to the Saturday courts as a measure of last resort. Mm-hmm. I've been instructing my compliance officers, and I like to call them now relationship managers, to make sure that the good things about the SNET scheme get put out there so that the people whose monies we are trying to collect, those people will have confidence in us and know that if they don't contribute to SNET, they'll be shortchanging themselves. So we've been getting very good responses from the carrot side, which is when you explain to people and they go, wow, so I can actually go on SNET pension and earn 40,000 Ghana cedis a month or 20,000, right? When they see that, then when they are giving you their money, they are not that reluctant. But when all they see is that, oh, my neighbor is only making 300, then they'll say, well, what's the point? So once they see the value proposition, I think that people will voluntarily give us their money.
From you is more of now of a moral suasion than doing the legal.
There's always the carrot and the stick. Okay. Yes, the stick. There's a time for the stick, and there's also a time for the carrot. The carrot is necessary because me waving the stick costs me money. I have to send people out there to chase, right? So I like to push the carrot. And then after I've pushed enough carrots and people are not biting on the carrot, then at some point I have to apply the stick.
Meanwhile, contributors are expected to get additional 38 cedis 30 pesos as payment benefits. Director General Dr. John Tinkrine announced this yesterday in Accra as part of the review in pension indexation.
First of all, the law asks us to do that every year. The point is that, you see, people on pension are on fixed income. And because normally there is inflation, which is higher than, which is positive, what that means is that if the monies are not increased, then the purchasing power gets eroded. So you want to make sure that the people on pension, at least their purchasing power is maintained. So the law enjoins us to index pensions every year, and so that's why every January SNET gets together and consider things such as what has been the price inflation, the CPI. I mean, a basket of goods. If a pensioner is buying a basket of goods this year, is he going to be able to buy the same basket of goods the next year? So we take that into account. Then we take into account also the cost. I mean, it is always going to be, theoretically, you can increase pensions, let's say, by 100%, right? And that takes care of preserving people's purchasing power and even enhancing the purchasing power. But the question is, can you sustain that? So we look at sustainability, long-term sustainability. And then also very important is your ability to pay, because the pensions are such that, it's not something that you can defer. When the month comes and the time comes, they have to see the money. So you have to have enough liquid assets to be able to draw on to pay when they come due.
Coming to more details on that, but what I was also want to ask you that on our part in trying to understand this whole thing, it looks like there's some ambiguity, and help me out as in what has happened right now and how this increment is going to affect me from a pensioner. There's talk about 6.6%, there's talk about 11%. Breaking it down for me, what has happened and how would the payment be affected?
Right. Okay. So the overall indexation rate is 11%. What that means is that if we take the whole pot on a total pension bill and you increase it by 11%, that gives you a certain amount of money. That amount of money is about 240 million Ghana cedis for the year 2020. Now, and that represents 11% uplift from the pot from last year to this year. Now, that 11% is redistributed, right? Because there is, if you look at the distribution of our pensioners, it is very bottom heavy. A lot of people are on the low side of the scale, the low earning scale. And then with a few, people earning very high. There are people who are earning 20,000 Ghana cedis a month, 40,000 Ghana cedis, 50,000 Ghana cedis. And then there is a lot who are earning, 300, 400, 500 Ghana cedis, right? And that's the majority on the low end.
You're still watching Marketplace Live on Joy News. Now, Ghana is now closer to becoming classified as a high-debt distressed country. That's according to the latest IMF staff report issued on Ghana after it recently completed assessing health of the economy. The move was being influenced by rising energy sector debts and possible moves to classify the Sino-Hydro deal as a debt. The move could increase the country's risk profile and cost of borrowing. According to the Bank of Ghana, the country's total debt stock has reached about 208 billion cedis ending September this year. My colleague George Wiafi joins me now in the studio with some more explanation on this. George, welcome to the Marketplace.
Thank you so much.
So what does this latest report say, or what does it mean for us as a
So
country?
both the IMF and then the World Bank, in terms of all their members, they do what they call the classification based on your debt levels. You have the low risk, the high risk being debt distress and all the rest. And based on the IMF's own assessment that they've done, first, we were classified as risk of debt distress due to several variables that they look at. In terms of first, your revenue, the ability to, in terms of how much you've been able to mobilize in revenue, using that to service your debts, how much are you getting in revenue and all the rest, your debt exposure and all the rest. So there are several, about 7 of them that they do this assessment to look at how, or your ability to pay your debt back on time. Now, it looks like after March this year, they did carry out another review on this debt sustainability analysis, and they realized that now we are inching closer in the medium term to be classified as high risk. It's more of a warning to your investors. It's more of a warning to your development partners that you have gotten to a stage where you've taken on too much debt, you've not built enough assets to support these debts, and there's a likelihood that you would struggle to pay your debt back on time, and not because you cannot pay these debts. So
that's not too good.
In the past, when we were classified as a developing or a poor country, we could have then been described as HIPIC. Now that we are a low middle income country, we are no longer a poor country again. So but then we've gotten to that stage where it's more of a refined form of HIPIC, but not HIPIC. Okay. So we are a distressed country, and therefore, just like saying that you're in financial distress,
okay,
it means that you will have challenges in meeting your debt obligations. But some will say that just like what the rating agencies in the past have said, they've actually downgraded us and all the rest, but I stand to be educated and help me out, or even for the analysts and the economists out there, that the country, I don't think, has ever defaulted on their debts. So it is more of looking at all these indicators that the IMF uses in measuring your ability to pay your debt back on time. They believe that looking at the way things are going, if you're not building enough assets to support our borrowings, then it means that we are now closer, by a few steps, being classified as a high debt distressed country.
And what is the direct impact of this on our economy?
It's more of a warning. So it means that possibly our cost of borrowing is going to go up again. It could mean that if this is true, if it materializes, or even if the warnings are quite strong, the rating agencies are also going to review in assessing as our credit worthiness and our ability to pay our debts back on time. So the immediate impact to be that our cost of borrowing is going to go up. If you go through the 2020 budget, we are setting over 19 billion Ghana cedis to pay interest just on loans. So that is more than our capital expenditure. That is more than other critical things that we're able to do this in the economy. And some have even said that, looking at what we are facing right now with the Ghanas in terms of the pressure, it is also because government has taken a lot of debt, and within that space, they are also chasing these dollars to meet their borrowing or debt requirements as well. And that's how you're seeing that pressure on the Ghana city. So if the cost goes up, it has impact on even on our Ghana city. It has impact on sacrificing other critical projects that we have in the economy we're supposed to do to rather use the monies to pay these debts. Don't forget that again, all other things being equal, government is planning to issue a Eurobond. And again, warnings like this might not be good in terms of getting a good price for this bond that we're going to increase.
So what should government be doing now?
It's all about trying to review its borrowings and all the rest and ensure that every country borrows. If you look at other developed economies, you could look at their GDP ratio hitting almost like 200% and all the rest. How do you build your assets? How do you ensure that you are borrowing into projects that can pay for it? A project that will help build assets. If you're doing roads, if you're doing roads that you're going to tow, if you're building infrastructure, all these things are good, not borrowing to consume. And that is where the problem is. How can we lengthen the yield curve? How can we ensure that these borrowings that are going to come in, if we tell investors outside that we're going to use this money to build ports, let it go to build the ports. We will generate money from those ports to pay back, and even going forward, raise a lot of revenue from that port to fund the economy. And that could be the way out in terms of ensuring that going forward, if you build enough assets, then this whole idea about your debt in relation to your size of the economy might not be a big deal.
Do you think that we can come out of this classification?
It's a gradual process, some would say. It's a gradual process. And again, there's some level of disagreement here. Whilst government believes that the Sino-Hydro deal and other commitments, the cleanup of the banking system should not be put on the debt books, IMF and the World Bank believe that these things should be added onto the debt. And that's why from their projections, they believe that it will be going higher in the medium term than what government is trying to put out, that this is our debt position, this is our borrowing requirements, and we believe that going forward is a gradual process. We are building enough assets to deal with the situation.
So in the longer term, we could get out again of this.
Well, if the policies are going to work, and if government is going to stick to those measures and policy measures that they have put into the budget. Don't forget, going into the budget, we have 9 policies, we have deficit targets and all the rest, and we often end up causing an overrun. So if we stick to these policy measures that we have outlined in our policy statement in the budget, then it's likely that there is some plan in place, or there are some mechanisms in place to try and bring us out of this challenge, and so that we could get to a level where the IMF and the World Bank could say that, yes, of course, we have what it takes to clear our debts on time.
Okay. So what else is contained in the latest report?
A lot of things. There are recommendations, and this staff report is basically, anytime that the fund comes in to do an assessment of the economy, they present this report to the board of the IMF, and they do. So if you go through the report itself, it highlights issues about the fact that they think that the Bank of Ghana should also look at hiking the policy rate, and maybe that can squeeze some credit in the system, because there's some argument that sometimes excess cedi in circulation also put some pressure on the Ghana cedi, because those who might not be using that money, those who are afraid that cedi would depreciate, would want to run out there and get more dollars. And that could be a contributory factor in terms of the cedi depreciating against the dollar. So they're also recommending that what Bank of Ghana look at hiking the policy, which currently stands at 16%, and that could also help deal with the excess Ghana cedi in circulation. There are also questions about government strategy and plans to deal with the energy sector debt. They believe that in the medium term, that approach is not sustainable and government has to review it. There are also questions about how the Bank of Ghana has gone about with this cleanup, and they believe that a lot more must be done or should be done to ensure that the sector is indeed solid, as we all been made to understand.
Thank you very much, George, for
Thank you, Mr.
update. And that was George Biafe with an update on the latest IMF staff report. Now, commodity research firm Isoko says food prices have stabilized over the past 2 months, even under periods that an increase was expected. The development has been attributed largely to the Planting for Food and Jobs program, as well as other prevailing factors. There's more in this report.
The forecast comes after commodity prices witnessed a downward trend in December. There was an overall drop in the price of most commodities. In December, there was a sharp drop of 19.91% in the price of tomato to close at 400 cedis, 33 pesos per crate, with wheat also dropping 3.76% to close at 286 cedis, 80 pesos per bag. The much talked about in the month of December, local rice dropped 2.44% to close at 320 cedis, 14 pesos, while maize prices reduced by 1.66% to close at 126 cedis, 57 pesos per bag. Millet lost 1.53% to close at 221 cedis per bag. Cowpea also dropped less than a percentage point to close at 352 cedis, 57 pesos, with groundnuts losing 0.58% to close at 491 cedis, 71 pesos. Puna, however, experienced a hike in 11.15% to close at 618 cedis per 100 tubers, and cassava gained 4.02% to close at 73 cedis, 33 pesos per bag, with imported rice also gaining 2.56% to close at 368 cedis, 80 pesos a bag. If you're looking for maize to buy, you're likely to get the best in Techiman. The lowest price with 85 cedis was recorded last month, with the highest price of 126 cedis 57 pence was recorded in the Greater Accra region. The lowest price for local rice was recorded in Tamale, while a crate of tomato was cheaper in Techiman. It was sold for 245 cedis per crate, with the highest price of 400 cedis 33 pesos recorded in Takrady. Following this performance in December, Isoko says all things being equal, prices will be fairly stable in January 2020.
And on that note, we wrap up the marketplace for today. Many thanks for your company. My name is Emmanuel Abuaji. Have a great weekend.